Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, July 2nd. Happy belated Canada Day to you, my friend, my Canadian consigliere. Canada Day is on July 1st, and we're going to talk to Jamie about that in just 1 second. We're also going to talk about recruiting. We're going to go over a recruiting roundup, all the available targets to Notre Dame. Jadon Blair is going to be announcing on Friday. We're going to find out where he is going to commit to. And so we're going to go over how we feel about that, how we feel about the wide receiver targets, linebacker targets, and anyone else who Notre Dame might be looking at. And that's going to be the bulk of our show today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button on this video. Please subscribe to our channel. Please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is. We are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below, as always. And as always, Jamie, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang, who's currently on a boat with Irish Sports Daily's Matt Freeman. They're catching fish. Jamie, I've never seen fish this big. One of them, Ge, there's a photo. There's a fish bigger than Ge, Jamie. And I got I've never seen. How do you catch these? How do you bring them in? How do you bring them into the boat? I don't know. We'll have to get Matt or Ge on the show to tell us about this fishing extravaganza that they're on. Subscribers to Irish Sports Daily know that Matt is currently on vacation, well-earned vacation. He's doing a great job. But you don't want to go on vacation from getting a great wardrobe. And so you can go to ESQ Clothing. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Jamie, how's it going? How was Canada Day? How do you celebrate? How do you celebrate the occasion over up north there?
Well, it was a chill day for me yesterday because my son doesn't really like the crowds and stuff like that, so we didn't go and do any kind of thing. Like we didn't go do like the fireworks whole deal. That that's the same thing. We got it's not quite as to the extreme as I would say July 4th, but they do the whole thing. Like every holiday here, there's always fireworks. But so we didn't really do any of that. It was pretty chill, but usually like when, and typically I'm back in BC a lot of the times for that. And like growing up, we would have Canada Day. It's big everywhere, and they always have like pockets of different things, have different celebrations and stuff. And where my dad grew up, was a little place called Steveston, BC, which is in Richmond, just right outside of Vancouver. Used to be like a fishing village. Now it's like a very touristy, like kind of just on the water spot or whatever. And they would have the salmon festival every year. Good food, they have the parade, they have all that kind of crap or whatever, right? And all that kind of stuff. And it's just like loaded with people just kind of come in for it. And it's good times. It's just like good. Yeah. Like just mostly it's, I would say like food. And then, when I was younger, people used to do like the beer garden or whatever and get whatever. But like, but it's good times. It's great times actually.
It's always good fun. These kind of ceremonial for the country kind of thing. Obviously, the United States has 4th of July coming up, and that's a big food, fireworks. My kids hate the fireworks. Our youngest, our 5-year-old, she's coming in the room last night. Daddy, where are the fireworks? Like, are they outside? Like, are they right here? No, they're not here. They're over there. They're far away, but you can still hear them. Are they dangerous? Are they gonna, like, is it actually a fire? Right? She's 5 years old, right? So she's, is it a fire? Like, is there a fire in the air? Like, is something gonna catch on fire? I got to deal with that. So that's not my favorite. And of course, that starts like very early, right? Like the week of 4th of July, the fireworks always start off here. So it's going to be a rough couple of days on that front, but I'm sure she'll get used to it. I have a question for you though, Jim. So the food, right? You mentioned the food. You do grilling, I assume.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Grill, okay. Here's the thing. What do you like to put? Do you burgers? You like? I assume you're a burger
Yeah,
guy.
burgers,
How
dogs, whatever. Yeah.
Jamie Ueyama, the professor, like what do you like? How do you like your burger to be? Like in a perfect world, you're making your own. What are you putting on your burger, Jamie?
I don't like a ton of crazy stuff on a burger. If I'm just having like a burger at like a bar, like a backdoor barbecue
Yeah.
kind of thing, like some lettuce, fine. I'm not a big tomatoes guy. I'm not, tomatoes aren't for me.
Hmm.
So I like lettuce, and I'm just like pretty simple, like ketchup, mustard. I know some people don't like mayo, but I like mayo. I
Yeah.
got to put mayo on there. Sometimes you mix it up, you put barbecue sauce or whatever, but like
Hmm.
nothing crazy. Maybe some hot peppers, hot banana peppers, or something like that, just to like mix it up or whatever. Pickles if they got them, but nothing too crazy. I'm not like uh, yeah, obviously cheese, whatever that goes without saying. CP
Yeah.
hurts
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
pepper jack,
Yeah.
cheese, but I'm whatever. I'm not a snob with whatever goes in the cheese, whatever kind of cheese it is. I don't care.
Yeah. I'm a big Thousand Island guy. Love it. I make
Oh,
my
that's
own.
good.
Yeah, I make my own. I've kind of over time I've kind of perfected my Thousand Island sauce. I'm very excited about that. Love pickles, cheese, Thousand Island. If I can get some real nice crisp iceberg, let's throw that on there as well. And that's basically like if you give me that, I'm all set, right? I can do bacon, right? I will do bacon. Got to be crispy, crunchy though, because the last thing you want is you don't want bacon where it's like it's not when you bite down on it, you got to like rip at it and it's like getting stuck in your teeth and you're pulling it and then it's kind of coming out of the burger. I don't like that. You bite down on it, you crunch it, you get that bite, and then you save the rest of the bites for later. That's what I need out of that. But yeah, I love this time of year because I'm always having burgers. I don't have burgers as often when it's not summertime. And the July 4th, like 4th of July, that's when the burgers start coming. Love burgers. It's like my favorite thing. So we're grilling all the time. All right. Just wanted to get on that. Let's feed the comments a little bit here, Jamie. Sly Fox, 110404. Any thoughts on Riley Leonard winning Manning Camp? Do you put too much into that at all? A CFB Hurts is that's my vibe. A Heisman front runner. I think that's a good way to look at it. I'm thinking probably a lock right on that. So I'm probably going to put some money down on that. He's going to win probably. Has anyone ever won 2 Heismans in one season, Jamie? I feel like it's trending. Like that's kind of where I'm closer. But in all seriousness, I kind of look at it like Deuce in the Elite 11. He went there in this on the OT 7 where he did well on the 7-on-7. He won the MVP of that. That's kind of where I put it. Right? It's better that he goes and performs great. Does it mean he's going to win Heisman's? Does it mean that he's the quarterback that we're all hoping for? Not necessarily, but it's not a bad thing, right? You go somewhere, you show out in front of the Mannings. You got Connor Wegman there, who's your competition at Texas A&M in the first game. You've got Dylan Gabriel there. He beats them out. I'm sure there were other quarterbacks on hand as well. You show out in front of those guys. That can't be anything other than a good thing. How much of a good thing it is, that's to be determined. But what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the way to look at it is always with Elite 11 and Manning Passing Academy because they always have like the counselors there, right? Like they have the
Yeah.
guys who are there who are kind of helping out the guys who are already in college, and um, it's it's definitely not a bad thing if someone goes there and they're like, "Wow, this guy was impressive," whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not like a full stamp of like, this is going to, you know, equal to this or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Although now I kind of want to look at it now. Maybe I'll dive into it a little bit just to kind of see if it's like, all the guys who were kind of hyped up from it. What kind of happened for them
Right.
before,
Right.
but
Like,
after,
was it?
because
Yeah. What did it portend for
yeah,
other people in
because
the past?
I mean, it's interesting because so Dylan Gabriel, he got the the buzz after he was the guy people were talking about after Elite 11. They were like, oh yeah, he was like way better than I thought and all that kind of stuff, right? So but it's like one of those things where it's like, well, he's a 6th year guy, and it's there's all these other kind of factors that go into it. It's different for different people. But I also think too, like the one thing with Riley Leonard and why he would kind of fit under the thing of like, this is a guy you want when kind of the chips are down, kind of based on like his play at Duke and just that kind of situation, is that like, that was the one thing that I heard about him in spring was they're like, oh man, he's like that dude who it's like, hey, we're playing basketball, and he was a good basketball player in high school, right? But like everybody's playing basketball, he comes and it's like, well, his team wins, and he makes the key plays down the stretch for them to win, and they go golfing, and you're like, dude, this guy's the best golfer here. Like it's just he's that guy, who goes and does that. He just seems to be kind of good at everything. He's good at everything, and he's good in those like kind of competitive situations, which, man, I think that's a great thing to have in a quarterback. So take it as nothing but a good thing for that it happened. But don't like overreact like this is going to be like lead to stardom. Although I'll say, like, I do remember there was like a Johnny Manziel thing where it's like he like blew off he didn't show up or whatever thing. And I'm like, not that the guy didn't have red flags before that, but that was like one of those like, hey, maybe this guy's never going to watch film in his whole entire, career or whatever. Like, it's like those kind of things. Like if I was, an NFL team, it's like when you're kind of looking at future success or like how good this guy can be, it's like, I am going to look at that kind of stuff when guys flake out like that.
I think that was a big deal at the time, right? Like that got a ton of like people were like, hey, this is kind of red flaggy, and then of course it got the like, actually it isn't, it's fine. You don't have to. And it's like, look, people were like, it's just red flaggy. And it turns out it was red flaggy. So that's something. The point you just made about Riley Leonard and being a competitor, how we did the overrated, underrated show last week, I think it was. Underrated, like just how much of a competitor Riley Leonard is. Like, I think everyone has been so focused on like the accuracy conversation, which I think like that is overrated. Like, it's not like he was a 48% passer. You know what I mean? Like, the guy was over 60% at Duke. He's not like, I don't feel like he's this guy who can't, the Brandon Wimbush can't hit a net, right? Like, it was never that, right? But I think that there's an underrated part of his game where, like, and Notre Dame fans, we don't have to think of anecdotes for this. Just look at the way it was when Notre Dame played Duke. Duke was a mess in the passing game. They couldn't find anything on offense. They couldn't figure out Notre Dame's defense. Notre Dame had them completely in control, and he figured out a way to move the ball. And he figured out a way. It's like, I need to get down the field X kind of way, and I'm going to do that. He started running. They started running him. He started making better throws, and then he kind of willed them into the lead. And I don't know about you, Jamie, but when it was 3rd and 4 in that fourth quarter before Notre Dame's last drive, and it was like, if Duke gets a first down here, they're going to win the game. I thought, if they give the ball to Riley Leonard here and they let him run, he will get this. There is no way he is not. But they didn't do that. They gave it to the back, and Notre Dame tackled the back, and it worked out, right? And then they had to give up the ball, and Notre Dame went down and scored. But I was thinking, man, there's no way Riley Leonard will be denied if they just run him here. And I think that he's that kind of competitor, right? And I think there is something to be said for that. And there is something to be said for, like, you want that type of guy leading your offense. So that's something that I've always kind of just liked about him. And there was just an intangible quality, doesn't really come up in stats, doesn't really come up in, kind of a lot of things that we evaluate. But, man, what a playmaker he is in kind of competitive type situations.
I mean, it's a lot like Ian Book. It's very similar to Ian Book. And I know that, there's a lot of like Notre Dame fans that would, always had misgivings about Ian Book and kind of like his abilities and what he can do. But I mean, the one reason why I do think that people should take into account, like when someone's like, "Oh, this guy's a winner," it's like, well, if this is a guy that when it comes down to it, he makes winning plays. When it's like you need him to make this winning play, and he does. That's what Book did a ton of at Notre Dame, and
Yeah,
that's just one of those things. It's like they needed. It's the reason why the record was so good during that time, because there was a lot of those close games where it's like, man, like they just really kind of need that. And I mean, even if you look at it, and I mean, I wouldn't even say like it's tough to put it, but like Jack Cohn kind of made some of those plays and stuff like that
for
too
sure.
in
Yeah.
his year too. And it's just you need someone who's like not afraid of the moment and is like can embrace that moment. And I think that's just a big thing, and that's why um, kind of going back to kind of leading up to like the Texas A&M game, it's like, well, that's why you want a guy with experience who's like done that before. That's going to be like, all right, guys, we're down a score here. It's the fourth quarter. We got to get points. Like, the team can feel confident. Then I'm like, man, we're going to score here.
And he's just built for it. He's just mentally. He has that mentality of like he's going to be aggressive in those situations. He's not going to shy away, and that's a good thing. Sergio asks, "Are you concerned Riley Leonard will be able to run as much with the injuries?" Like, it's just for me, it's not a concern. Like, it's not a greater concern than any other player who Notre Dame would want to run. If Deuce Knight was the quarterback and they want to run him a ton, I would be as concerned. Like anytime you put your quarterback in a situation where they're going to take hits, like, yeah, there's an injury risk. I don't think he's an injury prone guy.
No, he's not.
Like he got rolled up on by Howard Cross. Now, like you could say like, the concern of like, he's had a bunch of procedures on the same foot for the same reason. Like, yeah, like that's not great, but I don't have any reason to believe that what they're saying is like, hey, it's okay now. Like Riley Leonard says he's okay now. Like, I don't have any reason to believe that he can't recover from this ever. Right. It was just like, I think the way they initially tried to deal with the injury probably made it so he had to have a number of procedures, but I think that's kind of behind him. Now, that's my opinion. I don't have like a strong, I don't work out with him. I don't know what it looks like when he works. I truly don't know, but so there's no way for me to like point to this and be like, that is proof. I just don't think I think it's going to be okay.
I mean, I've heard enough that it's not, no one should, because I see it all the time from fans. It's just like, no one should be concerned about it.
Yeah.
Like no one should be concerned about it. The reason that he had the extra surgery is because it didn't have anything to do with like, well, this was like a reoccurring thing. It was like something outside of his control that was a screw up on Duke's part. So
yeah,
that's all you have to say. It's got nothing to do with Notre Dame, nothing to do with his recurring thing. Also, like, I don't know why people like when Marcus Freeman is like, yeah, if this is a real game, he could have played in the spring game. Like, yet some people are like, is he going to be ready for fall camp? It's like, they said he could have been ready for the spring game if they really wanted him to. Like, he's fine. He's fine. He's totally fine and healthy.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been over this. Jay Patterson says, which former Notre Dame QB do you feel like is a good comp for Leonard? He said he's hoping for good Kaiser.
I mean, I
don't know that we've done this. Maybe we have.
I mean, I think he's a better runner and a better athlete than Kaiser.
Yeah.
Size wise, I think it's similar. Not that, I mean, obviously Kaiser was a good runner, but it's just not the same. He's not as elusive or whatever. Right. So I mean, I kind of think he's like kind of a bigger Ian Book is what I would say. And then, the downfield stuff too is like where, I mean, either you would say if you see him take that step as a downfield thrower this year in this offense, because he didn't have a lot of opportunities in Duke's offense, and you say, okay, well then he is a more athletic Kaiser, is what you would say based on his physical profile. Right now, I would say he is a bigger Ian Book, and that's the way that I would, describe him as for recent guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair. And then someone said Sergio Jarius Jackson. I like that. I don't think that isn't that far off, actually. Jarius Jackson. I think that's what Riley Leonard is kind of similar to what Jarius Jackson would be, but it's like you want him to get to that point where you're like with some of the deep ball Kaiser stuff that where he was,
I think it would be if Jarius Jackson was as fast as Brandon Wimbush, because I think Riley Leonard is considerably. I think he's as fast as Brandon Wimbush was at Notre Dame. Like I really do believe that. Like he's a long strider. It doesn't look like he's moving that quickly. He does not get caught from behind. He does not. He will hit an 80-yarder on you. If you get him in the open field, he will go the distance. He is not someone that will get run from behind. So I think that, again, his athletic ability, his running ability is something that people don't think is as elite as it is. And so that's kind of how I feel about him. All right, moving on to another question. This is kind of moving into the recruiting realm. Blayberg, thank you for bringing this up again, Blayberg. Good day, gentlemen. Greg, I saw extended highlights of Dallas Golden and retract the degree to which I was disappointed in his play. Jamie was correct. So to catch people up, there was video of Dallas Golden in one-on-ones at the Rivals. Was it a 5-star camp? I think it was.
Yeah.
Is that what it called? Yeah, Rivals 5-star camp. He had some rough reps in one-on-ones. And so I went back and watched, and a lot of it was like technique mistakes. And I was texting Jamie about it right after the show. I watched it and I was texting him about it. And there are certain things that you do in one-on-ones that you simply cannot do and put yourself in a good position. So like there's one play in one-on-ones where someone runs, it's actually Dalen McCutcheon runs a quick, like kind of a skinny post on him. And Dallas Golden's playing off coverage. He's playing off coverage and he's playing outside leverage. So he's looking in at the quarterback, never takes his eyes off the quarterback and is looking at the quarterback the whole time. You are never going to get a good jump on a wide receiver who's running a skinny post when you're doing that, right? Playing off outside leverage is something you do in a football context, right? You need information down in distance and where they are on the field and what do they like out of this formation and things like that. When you're just sitting there and off coverage looking at the quarterback and it's man, you're putting yourself in a terrible position. He gets beat there. Another one where he's in press, and Jamie mentioned this, like how much is he pressing in high school? Not very often. He's in press, but he's not jamming. He's not getting his hands on the wide receiver. So he then doesn't give ground. So if you're in press, you can backpedal a little bit and give space. And so that in turn, you let the wide receiver, you can stay in phase. If he intends to run a go, you can kind of cut him off by creating the angle by giving ground. He doesn't give ground. He doesn't put hands on. He gives free release to the outside and the receiver just runs by him. It's like you have to do one of those things in order to put yourself in a good situation in one-on-ones. Now, there's 7-on-7 clips. He does much better in 7-on-7 clips because now there's context to this. There's different route combinations. There's coverage combinations. He did a much better job in the 7-on-7s. And so that was kind of how I saw it. As far as like an athlete, same kind of athlete, really good athlete. He's, he has the tools, but he's just making some like mistakes that are kind of specific to the one-on-one drill that really put himself in a bad spot, and he got cooked. And that's what happens when you're up against elite athletes at a 5-star camp. Anything from you on that, Jamie?
No, I think you covered it. Like, just kind of what we were talking about. Like we kind of talked about it a little bit off the air after the last show too. Like, kind of just explaining about it. It's just like, not concerning stuff, just small stuff that you're like, this is the kind of stuff that if he's going there and actually getting coached,
Yeah.
no shots at whoever the coach is there. I'm not trying to whatever. I'm just saying like, those camps are for, the show and the highlights and all that kind of stuff. It's not as much for, you're not going there because it's like, man, I'm getting the first rate coaching. It's not like going to Notre Dame's camp where it's like, okay, well, like, guess what? Mike Mickens is going to be like, pull him aside after that and be like, no, this is what you did here. But like, so it's just a different kind of atmosphere where some of that stuff just gets corrected quick. And then it's just like, okay, the next rep is, going to look a lot better because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's one of those things like you would look at later. And if you're at Notre Dame taking one-on-ones, like you're not going to if you do make those mistakes, they will get corrected in the moment right away. And they're not just going to jump up to the next thing because it's the nature of the camp. Right. So that's how that works. I would be more concerned. Anything like this, I would be more concerned if it was like, man, he's not the athlete that I thought he was, like that sort of thing stands out. And that just wasn't the case and hasn't been the case. So yeah, still feel good about him. It was, had a bad camp. I don't even say had a bad camp, had a bad one-on-one session, and that happens. Ge Wang is here. Presumably he's on the boat, Jamie. Ge, thank you for being here. Thank you for always being a sponsor of our show. These fish you're catching, they're amazing. Good job by you. Hopefully Matt is doing okay and not working because Matt needs to
put away the phone, Matt.
Put away the phone, Matt. You don't need
Just
to
chill.
You need to chill. You've done a bunch of your work. Let other people carry the way. It's just like when you want to get a media company, Jamie, and you want them to do the work for you, right? They come, they shoot the videos, they put it together, and they put it out for people. They do the work. You play the games, they put together your highlight reel, and that's what they can do for you. And if you want to find a media company to do that, then you go to VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Pops is in the house, Jamie. Just want everyone to know that. CFB Hertz. I'm sorry. That's CFB Hertz. CFB Hertz is in the house. Pops is here. Thanks for being here, Pops. All right. Let's move on to the recruiting aspect of this. Let's lead off with Jadon Blair, who's going to be announcing on Friday. He's got some finalists. I believe Penn State. I believe Michigan is a finalist of his. I saw him holding a South Carolina hat as well. Ge Wang says Vahid is a catch. See that? See how he did that? The Vahid is a catch, and because fishing and okay. All right, good job by you, Ge. Notre Dame trending for Jadon Blair. I think ISD as a staff feels good about this situation. Do you feel the same, Jamie? I feel like this really goes a long way to solidifying the defensive back class. Incredible defensive back class. It's got Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Ivan Taylor, Jadon Blair. Am I missing someone? I feel like I'm missing someone. Cree Thomas. That's right. Cree Thomas in the class. That's as a five-man class. Ethan Long as a six-man class. That's as good as Notre Dame has done in a very, very long time. We've talked about how he compliments before. Jamie, how are you feeling going into Friday? And how good can this class get with those six guys?
I mean, it is. You heard Mike Frank say it on Power Hour yesterday. For those who didn't listen to it, that it's the best DB class that he's covered since he's covered Notre Dame recruiting, and he's done it for a long time. And not that you don't have to throw up Sergio's thing about the question about Mike Denbrock,
Right.
but just kind of to let people know about Mike Frank, like when Mike Denbrock was on Willingham staff, like, not too many people covered Notre Dame recruiting when Tyrone Willingham and all that staff
Yeah.
was still going on, and obviously before that with like Davey and all that too. And Mike's been doing it for a very, very long time, so it shows you like kind of what kind of class that they're putting together. And yeah, I mean, I think people should feel always to like when a million people are like, "Hey, this guy's going to Notre Dame." It's like, yes, like like
Yeah.
when and obviously you trust when the ISD guys are telling you too, especially because no one is going to like blow smoke. We're not trying to get clicks for when anyone's making a prediction, specifically if you see if Matt makes a prediction on someone, it's like he has very like concrete intel that person,
Yeah.
that's where the person is very likely to go. So yeah, feel confident that Jadon Blair is going to pick Notre Dame.
Yeah. And again, as a 6-man class, it's just kind of unbelievable. I mean, you have a situation where Creed Thomas is going to be a corner. Mark Zachary is going to play corner. You have Dallas Golden, who's versatile. They're very adamant that he's going to be a corner, but he has versatility, right? And we've talked about Ivan Taylor, who has a ton of versatility. And I think Ethan Long and Jadon Blair are kind of locked into that, safety spot, but that's good, right? Like you have your 2 corners, you have your 2 safeties, and then you have your guys who are position versatile. It's exactly what you want in this era of college football, in this era of defense, the way that teams are starting to play defense with the multiplicity and being having multiple types of defenses and multiple types of coverages, playing 6 in the back, things like that. So having those guys again, and people have gotten into the Kyle Hamilton comparisons, and I get it from a size standpoint, but he doesn't have to be that to be a very, very good player for Notre Dame, and a very useful player, especially in the context of the rest of the class. Would be a huge recruiting win for Notre Dame. And I think just kind of talk about what it says about their ability to recruit, right? Because Chris O'Leary was in charge of a lot of these guys, and then he moved on to the NFL, and Notre Dame kind of had, I don't want to say scramble, but they had to overcome some things. And I think that's true of Ivan Taylor as well. They had to overcome. It's like, we thought we were going to be coached by this guy, and now we're not. And now they go in, and other teams had a ton of momentum, and now Notre Dame pulls it out. Just kind of go into that and how important it is for the recruiting prowess of the staff.
Well, I think one of the things too is that it's a lot easier to recruit when Mitchell just mentioned that Xavier Watts is a Walter Camp preseason first team
Right.
All-American as well as Howard Cross, right? But when you have a safety that wins a Bednarik Award, and then you also have Kyle Hamilton in the NFL, who's one of the best defensive backs in the NFL, so you have 2 guys who played the position. One guy currently on the team and the other guy who was just most recently on the team. And then you have Aloy Gilman, who just, obviously is a starter in the NFL and is making plays and stuff too. Like that makes it a lot easier to recruit that position, no matter who is coaching it. It's just a fact, right? And then at corner, it's like, well, you have Benjamin Morrison. And it's like, well, you have 2 years of Benjamin Morrison playing at a high level, and you see like Benjamin Morrison, like, get named as like a projected first round pick, a top 15 pick, and all this kind of stuff too. It just makes it so much easier to recruit that the position. And guys want to play where they know they're going to get developed, They want to fall. Everybody kind of thinks it's like everyone's their own guy, and they want to like be their own guy, and like it's like some of these guys are like too into like the brand of like my own brand and all that kind of stuff. But you can't deny that people want to go somewhere where it's like, I know that this is like, they're going to put me in a position to become a high pick or an NFL player or a great college player or whatever, right? Like that's part of it. That's huge, right? So that's why it's just critical to, ride that momentum. That's why offensive line and tight end, it's just like an easy thing to recruit for Notre Dame, because it hasn't mattered who the coach was, specifically at tight end, you too, because they just, you just flipping guys left and right there in terms of who's the tight ends coach. And it's like, well, guess what? They're going to land some guys who are studs, because like they know you're going to go to you go to Notre Dame, you're going to play in the league.
Yeah. Mitchell Vahiluk, thank you for this bit of news. We really appreciate it. Howard Cross and Xavier Watts, Walter Camp preseason first team All-Americans. You mentioned Xavier Watts a second ago. Good for Howard Cross, and good for kind of Walter Camp for recognizing. Like, I feel like he's not a flashy player, and I feel like he gets he gets kind of overlooked nationally, right? So good for Walter Camp on that. Ben Morrison, second team All-American. Bad on Walter Camp on that. If it is Walter Camp, I assume that's Travis Hunter and the kid Will Johnson from Michigan. I assume they're the first team corners. I'm just tell you right now, I think as a corner, I think Travis Hunter's overrated as a corner specifically. I think Ben Morrison's a better corner than him, and I think he's a better draft pick than him. Not that he's bad. I just think, I mean, look, the top corners are the top corners. I just think Ben Morrison's better. And it was Bill Connolly who had some like really, really good stats on Ben Morrison. It's just like teams were 1 of 20 throwing the ball down the field against Ben Morrison last year, or in the last 2 years. And like the one catch was like a 12-yarder or something. Like he just doesn't give up anything down the field. So, great player. And Jaden Harrison was a second team returner. It'll be interesting though. Like, will he be the punt returner, or will that be Jordan Faison? Will he just?
No, he'll be the kick returner, because he was.
He's going to do kickoff returns. So
I mean, it would be stupid. Just hand him the job, like
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, on the kick returns.
On the kick returner.
Yeah,
the punt returner. I don't think he's just. I mean, there had to be a reason why he didn't do it at Marshall, and I'm going to guess it's probably just like. I mean, some guys track it better in punting, whatever. Some guys just have a better feel for it. I would be surprised if Faison isn't the punt returner, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, like Faison, when he got chances, when they switched him in for Tyree, he looked good doing it. So yeah, it'll be. I would be surprised if someone else other than Faison for the punt return.
Yeah. Okay. On to more recruiting. Derek Meadows. He's in decision mode right now. I think he's going to be deciding fairly soon. Where are you at with this, Jamie? I'm just going to throw it out there, open-ended. Where are you at with Derek Meadows in your mind? We know how ISD thinks in terms of Matt and Christian. I want to know where you're at.
I mean, I think he'll probably end up picking Notre Dame. I think it's going to be. I wouldn't be shocked if he chose Alabama, but it seems pretty obvious that those are the two, at the top of the list. And I think if Alabama, it would be Washington would be the other one if those guys had stayed at Washington. It's like they got on him early too, so they had that early relationship. The one thing is, and I don't know how he views it because different guys view it differently, but they obviously are in on a lot of other big guys.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's going to squeeze Meadows out, but I would assume that they would still take Meadows, but I don't know that that's the case with them. And obviously for Notre Dame, like Meadows is a take whenever. Like they're just going to take him at whatever point. I just think it's like there's just been enough work done for a long time, like well over a year into Meadows recruitment, that Notre Dame is going to end up winning out in the end for it. But certainly I think it's like with him and all of these guys. Somebody asked about like NOB and Faraimo. It's like, Yeah, I mean, I think if you said, "Oh, if you had to pick today, who would you pick?" Well, I'd pick Notre Dame for those guys, but it's like that doesn't mean tomorrow it might not be different,
Right,
right? So
right.
that's kind of how I feel about all of these guys. Really, is that like um, until they set a date, and then you kind of have a feeling going into it. Um, there's no real prediction that is going to matter.
Yeah.
It isn't going to matter, right? It's like, it's why, and whatever, like this isn't anything to do with Loy or whatever, but I know Tom Loy always puts out, which is the right way to phrase it. It's like, today my crystal ball is on
Right.
this. It's like, well,
Yeah.
the reason he says that is because tomorrow it could be switched because that something might change. And if someone and unless someone actually commits and and gives their intention that this is the way it's going, or sets a date and say this is when I'm going to do it or whatever, then it's almost impossible to kind of just say, with authority that's the way it is. But like it's just like how with Blair, it's like everyone said like, well, I think like Notre Dame definitely leads for Blair, and you're like, they feel good, and then it's like, well, he said a decision, it's like, well, it's Notre Dame. Like that's kind of I think the way it has to be approached with all of these guys, really, right? Is that like until they set a date, you'll just have to wait and see. But I think there really hasn't been too many of these. One, and also two, I think this is like a good indication of where things are kind of headed with recruiting, is that there hasn't been a lot of these decisions of like post June decisions where it was like, wow, this is like a real like between like the top blue bloods during the the Freeman era, right? Like so the last few recruiting classes, I would say like you could say like Jeremiah Love, technically, even though he chose later, right? Charles Jagusaw is like another guy. Christian Gray, those are big guys that could have went to other play. Like they could have went like up until the point when whatever. Like there are some people who thought like, well, maybe LSU for Christian Gray because his coach was there, and maybe Ohio State. So it's like that's who you're battling for him, but Notre Dame won it, and Jagusaw like people thought Michigan. Right? People thought Michigan up until that time. And then obviously last year, KVA was the big one, but there wasn't like, Cam Williams was like very early. It's not that he wouldn't have picked between those schools, but like there weren't really any other guys that were like that kind of like after that were kind of on that level where it's like you're going against Ohio State, you're going against Alabama, you're going like this guy can go to Alabama, this guy can go to Georgia, this guy can go whatever, Penn State, whatever. Like so this is kind of like the test, really, right? This is the test of like, can you close on these guys? Because ultimately, whether or not these guys are on your schedule or not, if you're planning to be a playoff team, an annual playoff team, this is who you got to beat in the playoff. So it's like you lose NOB to Michigan or whatever. It's like, well, you might have to see NOB in a playoff like 2 years from now or whatever. Like that's the way it's kind of set up. So that's why these recruitments are so critical.
Yeah. With Meadows, I've said it before. I think he's always wanted to go to Notre Dame, and he waited as guys I frankly should, right? Like there is a good case to make. Like I just am not ready to commit, but I feel like in his mind he's always been a Notre Dame player. But then I think he went to Alabama. I think he really liked it. And I think, like, to your point, like they are on a huge run right now, like getting a ton of 5-star guys. Like Alabama is doing a very, very good job of recruiting. And I think he genuinely liked it. I think he went and he said, I could see myself coming here. And I want to be a part of, I want to be a part of this kind of tradition. I want to be a Alabama football player. And I think that's how he felt when he went on his visit. I think that as time goes on, I think that he will come back to the fact that he has always wanted to be a Notre Dame football player. And I think he's always kind of seen himself as a Notre Dame football player. Hold on one second. No, you cannot go swimming right now. You need to wait 15 minutes. I know. We'll go in 15 minutes. Thank you. Sorry, guys. But the baby wants to go in the pool, and Daddy is not watching. All right, so that's kind of how I feel about it. I feel like he wants to be a Notre Dame player. I think he's going to come back to that, and I think the fact that he took his time, he didn't commit, he didn't rush into anything. I think that's a really good sign for Notre Dame, and I think this just kind of reinforces in my mind he wants to go to Notre Dame, and that's what he's going to do. Dylan Robinson isn't the same as Derek Meadows in that he hasn't been recruited by Notre Dame as long. I don't feel like he's always had that pull to Notre Dame. I think they've done a very good job with him. I think they've sold Notre Dame to him. I think he absolutely sees himself at Notre Dame. I think he sees himself as a Notre Dame quote unquote kid, but they just don't have the strength of that relationship that they have with Meadows. And that's why with him, I know a lot of people feel good about him. I know Matt and Christian feel good about him in terms of like they feel like Notre Dame's in a good spot. It's kind of different than like the Jadon Blairs. I think they feel like Notre Dame's in a good spot with him. But I said before, like I just have a feeling, a hunch, a notion that frankly I'm a little bit wavering on as the weeks have gone on. But it's still kind of there. It's like I don't know. I want something stronger than kind of what everyone's giving me right now. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's just a lack of familiarity, so that's just why people feel that way and whatever.
Yeah.
And I would always just I would always lean towards Matt and Christian and what they're kind of
For
feeling
sure.
with it.
For sure.
But I think it's just one of those things where it's like when someone hasn't had that in the back of their minds the whole time, then you don't know like whether or not it's like, well, really need to sit and think about it. Well, they might think about like the relationship they've had with some other school that's been much longer, right? So that's just kind of the way it is. So I don't know. I think it's kind of getting into like with Robinson and like whatever. Like I don't even think we really need to talk about Tanook Hines because it's like it seems fairly obvious that it's just like no one really kind of knows what's going on there. It's like there's no one who really has a kind of feeling, but I think it's just like it's in a weird way because Mike Brown gets put in a tough spot. Anytime you are the new guy that gets hired and you are hired, now anytime you're hired, it's late in the process because you are the guy who's coming in and it's like, unless you are at, he was at Wisconsin and before that Cincinnati. So he wasn't recruiting the same guys. So it's like, well, now you have to establish a relationship with guys you weren't recruiting the whole time. It's not like he was at Ohio State and then left for whatever. It's like, well, I've already got, relationships with these guys. So it's hard. You're playing catch up the whole time. In saying that, like, it's a pretty important time for Mike Brown to land and kind of help land the plane with some of these guys because I mean, it's even though it is very, very early in 2026 recruiting, it's not, it started and they haven't got a lot of like 2026 kids on campus for wide receiver. Like if you said like compared to like 2026 linebackers, they've got like a ton of stud linebackers on campus. And, but that's like, they've had time to establish that, but it's like, they haven't done that at wide receiver. So it's like important to kind of do it here. And that's also too, like one of these things where it's like, it's all good to have like, Noah Grubbs in the 2026 class was like, we got to start, moving forward with the receivers. Like they need to get some receivers. They need to be on campus this fall for games. Like that absolutely has to be essential because then you're just going to play catch up the whole time again. Right. Like it's just, you don't, and yeah, you can find like Dylan Robinson was like a late guy for a lot of programs. Right. And that happens. And yeah, you still have like junior film to kind of evaluate and all that kind of stuff. But you just really, really just like it's so hard to like establish these relationships with guys if there's someone who's already like had these relationships for a longer time.
Yeah, and that is a good point about Robinson. It's like no one really has that kind of upper hand with him. So, the fact that Notre Dame is quote unquote later than other people, I think a lot of teams are kind of catching up with him, which is to their benefit, right? But like it's a great point about Mike Brown because it's in some ways like he's had a late start with these 2025 guys, but at the same time, like the board was fairly clear in terms of when I say clear, I mean players have already been evaluated. He knew who Notre Dame was after.
Yeah.
And then he kind of went after them, right? Like now it's like with 2026, like you said, he's got to play catch up. He's got to figure out who he likes, who he wants to put offers out to, and he doesn't have that relationship. So in some ways, 2026 will be harder than 2025 on that front, but he does have a lot of time. And so we'll just have to monitor that as we go forward. With Madden Faraimo, I think, the visit to Texas obviously opened up his eyes. I don't mind him pushing back his decision just because I just feel like that's okay, right? Like if he wants to take visits in like the fall or whatever, then that's obviously a little bit concerning. And all the good vibes you feel right now are just kind of like, I don't want to say out the window, but they carry a lot less significance. If he still announces in the summer, I really like where Notre Dame is at. I refuse to believe that like Texas is going to overcome Notre Dame because of the strength and conditioning thing, right? I it's not that he shouldn't be impressed by it. Absolutely, right? If he is, he is. It's fine. But I just don't think that's something that Notre Dame can't overcome. I just don't. So that's kind of how I feel about it. As long as he's in the summer, I think Notre Dame's in a good spot with him. What do you say?
Yeah, I would say that Texas, because of how, if Texas wins, it's not no one ever picks a school because it's like, man, this strength conditioning, unless somebody else has a bad strength and conditioning,
right?
So it's like so I wouldn't sweat that. That's good that he was impressed by it and they're doing that. Like that's smart on their end, but I don't think like that's something that. To be impressed by, cool, but that's not it's something to worry about. I would say that Texas, the reason why it would be attractive for a lot of reasons, like over, say, even Ohio State, is because they have used linebackers like Faraimo would be used, like, and I think Pete Kwiatkowski, like, who's their defensive coordinator, he was at Washington before, he's had guys similar to him that have become really, really good football players. And that's also the kind of position that he coaches too. So that's, it makes sense, but I'm just saying that is something comparable to what Notre Dame would do. Because Notre Dame obviously has that like selling point of being like, well, this is exactly the role that you would do. And they would show clips of Maris and James Sneed and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think that, it'll just come down to kind of like what he's feeling. And I mean, I can't blame a kid if someone was like, oh, man, I'd rather go to school in Austin, Texas than South Bend, Indiana. Like if that's what he wants, then so be it. Right. But like, I think, there's a lot going in Notre Dame's corner that I feel like it will probably be tough to overcome in the end, and that Notre Dame will probably win out.
Yeah, agree. And the USC thing, I just, how can you get away with like not contacting a recruit for as long as they did?
And he's in your backyard.
Yeah, and he's in, like there's just like, that's just, I don't care who the coaches are. That's just not okay. So that's how I feel about that. Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, Jamie. Oh, okay. God, that's what I'm gonna say. If he announces in the summer, Notre Dame's gonna get him. And if he says I'm moving on, or I'm not moving on, but I'm going into the fall, then Notre Dame will not. That's how I feel about it.
I mean, I don't really have I don't have a feel on what will happen with him. All I know is that like for months, no one even thought that you're like, hey, it'd be great if he takes an official visit. And then that all of a sudden turned into like Notre Dame leading. Like, so if they get him, I think it's gravy. You know what I mean? Obviously, he's a great player and he's a great prospect, but it's just like, to me, it would be a significant win because it's like, man, you came all the way from behind to like kind of show him what's what. And I think that, I mean, I don't know which way it can go or when he's going to do it. My guess is that a lot of the times too is like, man, these guys just get sick of it and they don't want to like deal with it and they don't want to have to talk every week. So that he'll probably decide, sometime in July or August or something like that. Cause I just think, I think so many of these guys, they just don't want to hear. Some guys love it. They love the attention, but most people just like get sick of it because, especially for someone like him, who's like, man, he's been hearing from these guys for like a couple of years. And it's just like, I don't want to, I don't want to have these, FaceTime calls with all these coaches all the time and doing all this and that. It's just like, you're just kind of ready to kind of get it over with. Because it's a lot. Like, and I would say even that's one thing that his brother didn't really experience, because even though he was obviously, he was committed to Virginia and then he flipped to Notre Dame later on, he wasn't like at the same level of like national recruit that his brother is right now. So it's just like a completely different ball game. And it's something that I think too, especially with those, that's why too, that's one of the reasons I think like so many of these quarterbacks, they part of the reason they choose early is because they want to save a spot. And then the other part is, I'm just done doing all this. Cause it's like, obviously, quarterback's the most important position. They're getting recruited, harder than anyone else. It's like, I don't want to go through 2 years of this. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think after the visits, I think Notre Dame has come out on top. That's my vibe. It's just how I feel about it. And so if he chooses while that's the case, if he goes on more visits, then it's like, okay, Notre Dame's on top, but not enough to pull the trigger. He wants to see more things. And then it brings us like it's a whole nother can of worms once that happens again. So that's how I feel. Mitchell Vahalik, any final thoughts on the U.S. men's national team performance last night? New coach for the Olympics. Jamie, he's talking about the United States and Copa America. Listen, there's no thoughts. This is what they've always been. They have always been this. They've always been a team that is like, scrappy against top teams. And then you play a team like Panama and you lose. You find a way to have a player get sent off for hitting a guy in like the 18th minute. Can't have that. And then you need a result last night and you don't get it. And for, whether the guy was offside or not offside on the goal they scored, the United States needed to win and they didn't score any goals. And, there's a stat, Jamie, called XG, which is expected goals. So basically they look at their chances and there's a kind of an algorithm that says, okay, you got a shot from this spot in this situation that should yield X amount of XG per shot, right? And the United States was, I think, 0.58 XG yesterday, which is basically, half the time you're scoring a goal, half the time you're not. It's just like, this is what they've always been. You could get a new coach, sure. I mean, obviously there's some systemic problem with U.S. soccer, and I should say men's soccer, right? The women don't have this problem.
Women, it hasn't been. I think it's not to totally just change topics, but it's just like, I feel like the U.S. women dominated for so many years, and then finally, like European countries were like, "Hey, maybe we should allow our women to play more and like encourage women to play."
For sure, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's like, wow, this competition just got much harder.
Definitely harder. I mean, like the women's team is like, there's a lot more. It's like kind of a long conversation. Like, I think they held on to too many veteran players for too long. And that, stunted development and on and on. I don't want to go on for another like 15, 20 minutes on this, but it just is a different thing, right? Where the men, they just like the women would never, like in the Copa, they would never just like this would never happen. Like they would not go out in the qualifying stages. They just wouldn't. So yeah, not great, but like not
Canada
surprising
through.
Canada through, making it happen. They have Jesse Marsh as their coach, and a lot of people wanted him to be United States coach, and he isn't. So, as CFP Hurt says, I don't have another 15 minutes. It's pool time for the kids. That is true, and it's hopefully pool time for all of you who are listening. As we said on last week, only one show today, or only one show this week because we got 4th of July coming up. And we're all kind of going on a little bit of vacation. So you're going to want to stay tuned into ISD on Friday for Jadon Blair when he announces, and tune into us next week. Also got a pod up with Dimes with Dara Mabry. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on the Irish Sports Daily YouTube feed. She's been practicing with the team, has a lot of insight there. She's actually playing with the new players. She feels really strongly about what Notre Dame can be for women's basketball in 2024, 2025. I mean, national championship, that's how she's talking right now. And she also gives an update on her own situation. So you're going to want to tune into that. If you like this show, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know every as we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. Have a great 4th of July, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep